The memory of that rainy evening still haunts me. I stood in our kitchen, watching the steam rise from a pot of pasta I'd made using her grandmother's recipe. The clock showed 9:30 when Eliana finally walked in, her dark hair damp from the spring shower. Another late night at the architectural firm, stretching our routine thin. I heeded her portion, but it sat nearly untouched as she retreated to her laptop at the kitchen counter. The sound of her typing, mixed with raindrops against our windows, and loneliness crept in, despite her physical presence mere feet away. In the 8 years we'd been together, I'd learned to read the subtle shifts in her moods, the slight changes in her expressions. This felt different. The project she'd taken on last spring had changed something fundamental between us. The late nights had become more frequent, but it wasn't just the hours. It was the emotional exhaustion she carried home, the weight that seemed to settle around her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Everything okay? I kept my voice casual that night, watching her fingers pause briefly over the keyboard. She glanced up, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just tired, Mark. This project is. The sentence trailed off as her attention drifted back to the screen. The signs accumulated slowly, like snowfall. A turned-away phone screen while texting. A new password I hadn't been told about. Fresh perfume I didn't recognize. Each detail seemed insignificant alone, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't unsee once I noticed it. Discovery came not through dramatic confrontation, but through simple carelessness. Her iPad lay on the coffee table one evening while she showered, still logged into her messages. I'd only meant to check the weather for our weekend plans. Instead, I found myself staring at conversations between her and Michael, her colleague. The same Michael who'd sat at our dinner table countless times, whose wife Sarah and I had spent evenings with, sharing wine and jokes about our spouses' workaholic tendencies. The messages turned my stomach. Last night was amazing, one read. I can't stop thinking about you. Inside jokes, intimate conversations, plans for their next meeting. All of it spilled across the screen in devastating clarity. I sat frozen until the shower stopped running, then carefully closed the iPad and went through the mechanical motions of preparing for bed, my mind racing with questions I feared to answer. The following week stretched like an endless performance. I watched Eliana move through her daily routine, getting ready for work, kissing me goodbye, sending casual texts throughout the day. Now I noticed the details I'd been blind to. The change of clothes before leaving the office, the delayed eye contact when discussing work, the slight hesitation before explaining her whereabouts. Desperation drove me to follow her one evening. The business hotel she chose sat just outside the city, respectable enough that no one would question professionals meeting for dinner. Michael arrived 15 minutes after her, carrying what looked like work documents, the perfect cover. 2 hours I sat in my car, nausea building, before driving home in a daze. The confrontation came on a Sunday morning, during our traditional coffee on the back porch. Spring sunshine filtered through our maple tree, birds singing overhead in cruel contrast to the moment's gravity. I know about Michael, I said quietly, gripping my coffee cup for stability. She didn't deny it. Instead, she set down her cup with trembling hands and began to cry. Not dramatic sobs, but quiet, devastating tears that seemed to emerge from somewhere deep within. The truth spilled out between those tears. Late-night work sessions that became conversations, conversations that became confidences, confidences that became betrayal. She spoke of professional ambitions she felt I'd never understood, of an emotional connection that grew unchecked, of one step after another until they'd crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. "I love you," she whispered, reaching for my hand. I pulled away, but not enough. Her silence provided all the answer needed. The aftermath unfolded in a blur of logistics and lawyers, of dividing 8 years of shared life into separate pieces. Sarah appeared at my door one evening, and we shared our parallel grief over whiskey, finding bitter comfort in shared understanding. 6 months have passed. The divorce is final. Eliana and Michael live together now, their love apparently worth the wreckage of 2 marriages. The healing comes in waves. Some days bring clarity and strength. Others echo with the phantom pain of reaching for a phone to share a joke with someone who no longer exists in my life. The bed still feels too large some mornings, the house too quiet, yet rebuilding has become its own kind of salvation. Marathon training fills early mornings that once held her. Old friendships have deepened, New ones taken root. The person emerging from this wreckage bears little resemblance to the man who once believed in unshakable love, yet carries a harder-won wisdom about the nature of trust and choice. The story writes itself differently now. Love still exists in its vocabulary, but tempered by reality, grounded in the understanding that even the deepest bonds require active choice and unwavering honesty. The hardest chapters often precede the most meaningful ones, even if their worth only becomes clear in retrospect. In the end, that's the only truth that matters, not the betrayal itself, but the strength found in surviving it.